Jack's hands trembled as a sneer sliced through the crowded cafe. Can't even hold a cup steady. Laughter echoed, eyes locked on him like a spotlight in a prison cell. But those hands hid a brutal story of war and survival, one no one was ready to hear. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Jack Reynolds shifted his weight from one foot to the other, the cool floor beneath his worn leather boots grounding him as the murmur of the line swelled around him. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, mingling with the clatter of espresso machines and the occasional bell jingling as the door opened and closed. Around him, the world bustled with the usual morning rush. Phones buzzed, conversations overlapped, and somewhere near the back, a barista struggled to tamp down an overflowing portafilter. But none of it mattered to Jack. His attention was drawn uncomfortably to the sharp, mocking tone slicing through the noise. "Hey, you gonna hold the line all day with those shaky hands?" The words stung like salt in a fresh wound, slicing through the fog of pre-coffee grogginess and exposing raw nerves. Jack's fingers twitched involuntarily, betraying years of muscle memory now turned into a trembling tremor, a silent testament to battles fought miles away from this fluorescent-lit cafe. Kyle, the young clerk with a smirk too wide for his face, didn't realize the depth behind that shake. To him, it was nothing more than an annoying quirk, a punchline for an easy joke in front of bored customers. The crowd's eyes flicked toward Jack, the ripple of laughter rising like a wave of judgment. Jack forced a smile, one that didn't reach his eyes, hoping to diffuse the situation. But inside, a storm brewed, memories of sand and gunfire, nights spent listening for the snap of danger, the sharp crackle of radio chatter interrupted by screams and silence. The tremor wasn't a weakness, it was a marker of survival, each involuntary twitch a whisper of sacrifice few cared to understand. His mind flashed back to the dusty roads of Helmand Province, where heat scorched skin and fear was as constant as the sun. There, Jack had led his unit through firefights that blurred days and nights into one continuous stretch of tension. 3 bronze stars pinned to his chest were more than medals. They were fragments of a life split between the battlefield and the invisible war waging inside him now. Each star a memory of friends lost, battles barely survived, and the weight of decisions that haunted him long after the dust settled. But here, in this bustling cafe, none of that mattered. Kyle's laughter echoed, ignorant and carefree, fueled by a world that celebrated convenience over courage. The boy didn't see the courage in Jack's tired eyes, didn't feel the cost behind those trembling fingers. To Kyle, Jack was just another inconvenience, an oddity to mock in the endless shuffle of morning routines. Jack's fists clenched at his sides, the sting of shame and anger colliding. He wanted to explain, to share the story written in scars and silent nights, but the words caught in his throat. There was no time, no space for his truth here. The line inched forward. The world moved on, indifferent to the battle he fought inside himself. The moment hung heavy, the coffee cup in his mind growing colder than the one he waited to hold. Around him the crowd shifted. Some exchanged uncomfortable glances, others returned to their phones or whispered jokes of their own. No one stepped in, no one asked if Jack needed a moment, a word of respect, or even a simple nod of acknowledgement. The silence was a weight of its own, pressing down like the armor Jack shed every morning but could never fully remove. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet resolve stirred. Jack's trembling hands weren't just a sign of past wounds. They were proof of endurance, proof that despite the mocking laughter and the casual cruelty of ignorance, he remained standing. Not because he wanted sympathy, but because he carried a purpose deeper than anyone here could see. The medals hidden beneath his shirt weren't trophies. They were promises kept, reminders that even when the world turned away, some battles were worth every scar. As the barista finally called out the next order, Jack took a slow breath, straightened his shoulders, and prepared to face the world again, tremors and all. Jack's breath hitched in his throat. The words lodged deep between restraint and the raw ache of years buried beneath silence. The coffee shop's din dimmed around him, as if the air itself had thickened with the weight of unsaid truths. Kyle's jabs, sharp and careless moments before, now cut through the stillness like shards of glass, reminders not just of youthful ignorance, but of the isolation Jack had carried since stepping off the battlefield. "Look, kid," Jack said, voice low but steady, a measured calm shaped by years of discipline and hardship. "These hands earned every tremble." His gaze locked onto Kyle's, the flicker of old battles burning behind tired eyes. It wasn't bravado. This was a statement etched in blood and memory, a declaration to a world that had long forgotten the cost behind such scars. Kyle's reaction was a dismissive shrug, his youthful arrogance still clinging stubbornly to his posture. "Yeah, sure, whatever. You're just an old vet who can't even hold a cup steady." The words dripped with condescension, a cruel echo of ignorance that pierced Jack's composure like a cold wind cutting through desert heat. But beneath the surface of Jack's simmering frustration, a deeper sorrow stirred. This wasn't anger at the boy. It was the sharp sting of disappointment. Disappointment in a generation too sheltered, too distracted to grasp the unseen battles fought far from public view. Kyle's sneer was a mirror reflecting society's indifference, a world eager to mock what it failed to understand, blind to the sacrifices quietly borne by men like Jack. Amid the charged silence, a soft voice wove through the tension. "You don't know his story, Kyle." Sarah's words were steady, imbued with quiet authority and compassion. She stepped forward from the nearby table where she had been sipping her coffee, her presence calm yet unyielding. Nurse by profession and veteran advocate by conviction, Sarah had spent years walking alongside those haunted by war, unraveling the tangled threads of pain and pride woven into their lives. Her eyes, steady and warm, met Jack's for a fleeting moment, an unspoken affirmation of solidarity. Then, from the depths of her bag, she produced a small, polished case, the kind reserved for treasures both fragile and fierce. The crowd's murmurs softened as the lid flipped open, revealing 3 bronze stars gleaming with quiet dignity. "Jack got these for bravery, not weakness," she said, her voice carrying the weight of truth as the medals caught the light. A ripple of realization coursed through the room. The casual, judgmental atmosphere shifted, replaced by a profound respect that settled over the gathering like a mantle. Kyle's smirk faltered, his face flushing with the unmistakable flush of shame and embarrassment. The laughter that once rang out so easily was swallowed by a sudden, uncomfortable silence, a silence heavy with the realization that a hero had been hidden in plain sight. Jack's hands, once the source of ridicule, now told a story far richer and deeper than the shallow assumptions of an unknowing crowd. Each tremor was a testament to courage under fire, to nights spent wrestling with memories that no one could see, but all could feel if only they paused to listen. The medals gleamed not just as symbols, but as fragments of history, fragments of a life fractured and forged anew in the crucible of war. Sarah closed the metal case gently, her eyes never leaving Kyle's. "It's easy to mock what you don't understand," she said softly. "But these hands, his hands, saved lives, on the battlefield and beyond. Every day he fights battles that no one else can see." The crowd shifted uneasily. Some averted their gaze, others nodded slowly, digesting the weight of unseen sacrifices that lingered just beneath the surface of their everyday lives. Jack felt a quiet surge of something he hadn't expected. Relief. Not from vindication, but from the simple human acknowledgement that sometimes, beneath trembling hands, lay the strongest hearts. Kyle's voice was barely a whisper, choked by the realization of his own ignorance. I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, simple, yet heavy with the promise of understanding yet to come. Jack nodded once, a subtle gesture of acceptance. No bitterness, no anger, just the steady calm of a man who had seen far worse than mockery, and who, in this small moment, allowed himself the fragile grace of being seen. The coffee shop buzz resumed around them, but it was different now, laced with respect, softened by the quiet echo of stories that demanded to be heard. Jack turned back to the counter, his hand steadying ever so slightly, carrying the invisible weight of valor beneath a fragile veneer. Kyle's footsteps echoed softly across the tile floor as he closed the small distance between himself and Jack, his eyes fixed on the scuffed toe of his worn sneakers rather than the man he'd just wronged. The earlier arrogance, the careless laughter, all drained away, leaving behind a raw, fragile vulnerability that few had witnessed from the brash young clerk. "I'm sorry." Kyle's voice was tentative, hesitant, and admission wrestled free from the clutches of ignorance. "I didn't know." No defense, no excuse, only the plain truth laid bare. Jack regarded him quietly, the lines etched deep into his weathered face, softening just enough to reveal the simmering complexity beneath. The tremor in his hands remained, steady and unyielding, a constant companion forged in fire, loss, and endurance. Yet now, beneath that familiar shadow, glimmered something new, the cautious light of forgiveness. "It's all right," Jack said, his tone steady but not unkind. "Most people don't." The words carried the weight of years spent bearing silent burdens, the heavy understanding that stories like his, often passed unheard, drowned beneath a sea of indifference. That single exchange, simple as it seemed, marked the genesis of a subtle revolution. Kyle, once the embodiment of youthful ignorance, began showing up at the local Veterans Support Group meetings, his curiosity genuine and his presence steady. He immersed himself in the stories, listening to the raw testimonies of men and women who bore wounds invisible to the casual observer, the scars etched into souls rather than skin. Each session chipped away at the shallow certainties of his youth, replacing mockery with empathy, ignorance with insight. Jack's narrative became a lodestar for this transformation, not as a grand heroic saga, but as a mosaic of human fragility and resilience. His trembling hands, once the subject of scorn, now symbolized a lifetime of service, sacrifice, and survival. The medals Sarah had shown that day were no longer mere decorations, but emblems of battles fought in distant deserts and in quiet, unseen corners of the mind. Kyle learned that courage was not always loud or flashy. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and enduring, like the hands that shook but never faltered in their resolve. Back in the coffee shop, the atmosphere shifted subtly but irreversibly. The space that had once echoed with impatience and mockery now hummed with a deeper current of respect. Jack was no longer just a customer with trembling hands. He was a living testament to the cost of freedom, a figure who commanded reverence without demanding it. Patrons who once glanced askance now offered nods of acknowledgement, conversations hushed as his presence passed by. The counter where Kyle worked transformed into a bridge, connecting two worlds that had been distant and divided by misunderstanding. This coffee shop became more than just a stop for caffeine and rushed orders. It became a sanctuary where stories were exchanged, where judgment gave way to understanding, and where justice took a form far different from punishment. Here, justice was restorative, a slow, unfolding process of awakening hearts and minds. Through this subtle shift, Jack's courage reached beyond medals and ceremonies, inspiring change in the smallest and most profound of ways. Jack's hands still trembled, the legacy of battles past etched in every involuntary quiver. But now, those same hands held something far more powerful, the gratitude of a community awakened to the realities of sacrifice, the respect of a young man transformed, and the quiet dignity of a life honored for what it truly represented. The tremor was no longer a mark of weakness, but a testament to survival and the ongoing fight, one fought not only on foreign soil, but within the hearts of those who dared to see beyond surface and stereotype. In the gentle hum of the coffee grinder, the clatter of cups, and the soft murmur of conversations, Jack found a new kind of battle won. Not one marked by medals or medals lost, but by human connection and the fragile, enduring power of redemption. The tremor in his hands, once the target of ridicule, had become the pulse of a story that refused to be ignored. A story that taught that respect is not given lightly but earned, not through grand gestures but through the courage to be seen and understood in all one's complexity.